everybody, welcome back for another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about how I managed to land a TEDx talk. And then I'm going to be doing some other videos about, writing the talk, how I learned how to do that, how I'm memorizing it. And I have not given the talk yet, but once I give a talk, I will share not just a link to the talk, but also my overall experience with the whole process. So let's dive into just this part about how I landed my TEDx talk, because it's absolutely something that you can do. And if you haven't considered it, I would highly recommend looking into it. So here's the thing. Like all academics, I go to conferences, I give presentations, and I'm kind of bored with it, if I'm being honest. I do enjoy like listening to other people's presentations for the most part. If the work is good and high quality, then yeah, I'm there. I like it. But I was just getting bored with it. I think I just needed a change. But also, really, I was tired of, just only talking to academics. I was really fed up with what I saw as having this very limited impact. And I wanted to expand my reach and expand my impact. And I thought that I should give TEDx a whirl because that had the potential to open up doors and help me make a bigger impact. Okay. So I decided, yes, I absolutely want to try giving this TEDx talk thing a go. Now, just in case you're not familiar, and if you're interested in this, TEDx is different from TED. So with TED Talks, you have to be invited, but TEDx, they are locally organized events and you have to apply to them. All right. And there's no central database that you can go to online, right? So it can be a little overwhelming. So let me tell you what I did. So the first thing that I did was I joined Taylor Conroy's Thought Leader Program. And I want to say this post is not sponsored, right? Like anytime in this video or future videos that you hear me talking about Taylor, you hear me talking about this program, this was all paid for, okay? In full, right? No discount, no nothing. So somehow I'd gotten on his email list way back when, and I was aware of this program, and so I joined it, okay? And I'll put a link to the page in the show notes so that if you're interested in it, you can reach out and get more information about it. But what happened is, right, I met with people on his team. They talked to me about my idea. They helped me put an application together. So I had support in doing that, all right? Because the way that you're writing and communicating, and I'm using my academic research for this talk, but the way that you're writing and communicating in an application is very different than the way that you write and communicate in like a conference proposal, okay? So it was very helpful to me to have people that could help me get an application together. Now, when I say put an application together, let me be clear. Each TEDx event has its own application. So let's just say that there's 100 TEDx events. There's way more than that, but we'll just say there's 100 TEDx events that you can apply to. Each one of them will have its own application process. So it's not standardized. But what Taylor's group has done is they've looked at all these applications and they've really kind of boiled it down to here are the questions that are commonly asked, or here are the types of questions that are commonly asked. Okay. So be prepared to, answer them right in a written application. So once I had responses to those commonly asked questions, then when I was applying somewhere, right, they might not ask a question at all that I had prepared a response to, and that's fine. Usually what happened is I would see a question that was kind of similar where I could say, oh, I can use something from, here and something from here, and I can kind of piece it together. So, it's not an exact one-to-one match, but it really makes the application process go a lot faster because you've already thought through everything and then some that they're going to ask if you were to go through this program. But if not, then I would suggest, right, if you're like, no, I'm not going to do a program, then, just go find a TEDx event and, just take a look at their application and maybe do that for, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So you get a sense of the kinds of questions that you're going to be asked. And then, go ahead and write a draft answering those questions. And that would likely be pretty helpful as well. So got the application prepared, right, as best as I can. And then it was time to start applying to places. Now, one of the benefits of using this Thought Leader program was that they had a spreadsheet that they updated. I don't remember how often, but often. And I would typically go in, maybe once a month and look to see who was accepting applications. Now, keep in mind, right, like if you get into a TEDx event, they don't fly you anywhere. They don't pay for your hotel, right? But because this was tied to work, you know, I was using this kind of in place of a conference. So there we go, right? I'm just going to apply it in anywhere and everywhere. You may need to be more constrained, like locally, regionally, whatever. Figure out what works for you. Just remember that if you get one of these, like nobody's buying your airfare or putting you up in a hotel room. But if it is connected to your work, and you're talking about your academic research, then you may be able to get that paid for by your employer. So that's something to look into. Okay, so it's time to apply. I start applying. And by the way, if you have questions about this process or an experience with TEDx that you'd like to share, I would love to hear it. Please, you know, go on down to the comments and let me know so we can keep that conversation going. Now, what I was told was that I would have to apply between 75 to 100 events to get an acceptance, maybe even more. But that the average rate is 75 to 100, okay? At least for the people that go through this thought leader program. So you keep in mind, right, how many people are at a TEDx conference? Not many, 8, 9, 10, right? I think the one that I'm speaking at, I think there's 8 of us, but don't quote me on that. There's definitely not more than 10 of us, right? And you can have hundreds of people applying to this, okay? So in some regards, like some of these events, you know, I'm not a good fit for, you're not going to be a good fit for based on the theme or whatever, but apply, because to some extent it is a numbers game, okay? If you've got a strong application, then it becomes a numbers game, and it's and about fit as well. With their theme and what they're looking for, and you know how what you're talking about versus what all the other people are talking about, right? There's probably some balancing. There's a balancing act, I'm sure, that goes on in there. So you may have to apply to more than 100. But I don't know how many I applied to, but I definitely applied to at least 75. Like I definitely fell into that 75 to 100 range before I got an acceptance. Okay, so I would go in, I would utilize a spreadsheet, and I just applied. Okay. So apply, lots of rejection, obviously. Be okay with that, because if I applied to 75 events before I got an acceptance, 74 of them were rejected. And I applied to more than 75. So eventually what happened is I landed an interview. This is very common. I don't know that necessarily all the TEDx people do this for an event, but it is common where they'll say, okay, you've made an initial cut, and now we're going to interview a certain number of you, and then there'll be another cut, right? And then that'll be our final group. So I landed an interview. I'm very excited, very nervous, probably overthought the whole thing. My interview was only about 15 minutes long, and it was a conference call with 3 other people, which I liked the people, but I don't do well on conference calls. I can do okay on a Zoom, because I can see you and I can interact with you, and on conference calls, I'm not that great because it's hard for me to know where to insert myself. I'm not getting those social cues. But did the best that I could. And really, they just wanted to talk to me some more about my talk, about my idea, the kinds of things that I thought I would cover, even though at this point my talk's not written. That's a separate video. And then they wanted to talk about how they run the event and logistics and things like that. And then I think it was within a week, I think, definitely wasn't more than 2, that I had an acceptance. So I got my acceptance on September 30th, and I'm going to be speaking on February 26th. So that gives you sort of an overview of how long I have to prepare. And in my next videos coming up, we're going to be talking about exactly how I prepared, how did I write this talk, and how, because right now I'm in the middle of memorizing it, how am I doing that? What does it look like? Because I'm telling you, yes, it's a lot of work. It'll challenge you. It's a lot of fun. And yes, you can do it. And I honestly think that if you've got work that can make an impact, you should do this at least once in your life.